It is Conan Horas, back from the grave. And I've been inspired by a couple of videos by some content creators, specifically Sargon of Akkad and the Armored Skeptic, and I wanted to get into the scene of debunking really bad logic. So I figured I'd do my first video on flat Earth because, that's always fun. And I want to see what people take of it. What are your thoughts? Leave them in the comment section below, of course, please. If this is something that you enjoy and you want me to keep doing, then I would love to keep doing it. But if you don't care for it and there's no real, market for it in the people that watch, then yeah, I just won't do it. Without any further ado, let's get into this video.
Everybody.
Oh, hello there.
I call this video the simplest, irrefutable flat earth proof.
Before you ask, yes, he does talk that slow. I realize that I'm a slow talker as well, but I don't think that I'm quite as slow as he is. At any rate, he also calls this video the simplest flat earth proof possible. I can think of a simpler proof. Alright? Look out at the horizon. The horizon looks flat, ergo flat earth. Super simple.
Now, I know there's going to be some people who will watch this who know me personally. And people who know me personally know that I am not a fool. I have a degree in math, and I have a Juris Doctorate, and I have been practicing law for almost 30 years. Some of these people who will watch this know that I have won some incredibly difficult jury trials.
Look, I have no reason to believe that this guy is not really good at making fantastic arguments. I have no doubt that he is a fantastic lawyer, as he says that he is. But when you have to preface your case with how good you are at arguing, it probably means either you're not very good at arguing, you don't think you're very good at arguing, you don't believe very much in the case that you're about to give or present, you're worried that the audience you're presenting to are going to make fun of you. The list goes on. The point is that I think he is worried about his audience making fun of him. Now look, whether or not you're made fun of does not change the validity of your argument. So let's just jump to your argument and tear it apart based on its own merits, or lack thereof.
So let's look at the first flat earth proof. You see the globe. Now consider an airplane. Okay, this airplane is going to fly always at a level altitude with respect to the Earth. And any of you who have studied the flat Earth ideas know that there is an equation that describes how much curvature is in the Earth from given distances, and that is defined as 8 inches times the number of miles squared. So that if you go through that calculation, you can figure out how far below the horizon something should be from a particular distance. And the idea also is that as a plane would traverse the globe, it would have to be always adjusting its nose a little bit down in order to continue at a level altitude. Now, if you consider this plane going to the east here, just going to the east, you see that the plane always seems to be level with respect to the Earth, and then, if it keeps itself at a level altitude, then it would just simply land at a country on the other side of the globe. Okay? That's easy to see when you're going east and west. But what about when you're going from north to south? And this is the proof, and you can't deny it. So you start your journey at the Arctic, as far to the north as you can. And you begin to go south. Now notice, as I'm going south, I have to continue dipping the nose of my airplane in order to stay level with the ground. Now I'm going to continue all the way to Antarctica. Now notice I'm continuing to dip my nose down to stay level with the Earth. Now I'm going down into South America, continuing to dip down, and finally I get down here to Antarctica. And look at that. My airplane is upside down. Well, you're going to say, well, we know that people that are in the southern hemisphere are still standing right side up. Everybody stands right side up on the Earth. We know that. But yet you just flew down here. You're upside down.
I'm sorry, I know that was painful to watch, but we needed to get his argument, his proof, so that we could then tear it apart. Anyway, I'm going to present his argument or his proof together as formal logic, and we'll go through it step by step. He has 3 givens that he uses to conclude that the Earth is not round. First, he says, if the Earth is round, then the nose of a plane must tip downward as it flies from north to south. In his second given, he says, the nose of a plane, if it tips downward as it flies from north to south, then the people on the southern hemisphere must be upside down. Finally, in his third given, he says that the people on the southern hemisphere are not upside down. Using these 3 givens, he takes givens 1 and 2, which are both logical progressions, and condenses them into a single logical progression. If the Earth is round, then people are upside down on the southern hemisphere. This is using a hypothetical syllogism. Therefore, the Earth is not round. This is using a modus tollens, which is another inferential syllogism. Now, his hypothetical syllogism and modus tollens, these are both perfectly airtight. I agree with the logic, and anybody else would agree with the logic. I also agree with his first and second givens. But I do not agree with given 3, where he says that the people on the southern hemisphere are not upside down. The fact of the matter is that the people in the southern hemisphere are upside down. And I'm going to prove that here shortly. When I do, he can no longer say that given 3 is true. Therefore, his modus tollens becomes invalid. That means he cannot conclude that the Earth is not round, but rather is forced to conclude that the Earth is round. Let's consider a man standing on the North Pole. I'm going to call him George. Now, George is looking to his right, and he sees an arrow that to him is pointing upward. What happens when we rotate his reference frame so that he's standing on the equator? Will his arrow that he sees be pointing right or up? And when he's looking at it, will he perceive it as pointing right or up? Let's find out. We have rotated his reference frame 90 degrees so that he is now standing on the equator. You can see that this arrow is pointing to the right. We can also see that he's standing in such a way that he is at 90 degrees facing right. Now he's looking down at this arrow, which to him appears to be upright. If we continue to rotate his reference frame so that he's on the South Pole, then logic dictates that he will be upside down, and so will the arrow, and he will perceive that arrow to be right side up. Let's prove that. Fantastic. Now he's on the southern hemisphere, South Pole, looking to his right, our left. He sees an arrow which is pointing down because it is on the southern pole or southern hemisphere whatever you want to call it. And fantastic. Now he's on the southern pole. He's looking at the same arrow, which has followed him in his reference frame. He now sees this arrow, which is pointing down, but he perceives it as pointing in the same direction that he is standing. That is to say, that he perceives it as pointing up, the same way he perceived it when he was on the North Pole and on the equator. He is upside down, and he perceives things which are upside down with him as being right side up. I think all of this in the thought experiment with George is sufficient to prove that his third given, that was the people on the South Pole are not upside down, is false. That he cannot use that given. His first two givens are fine, but his last given is false. That means that he cannot conclude that the Earth is flat.
I'm not a fool.
This concludes my first video, hopefully not last, where I get to critically analyze the logic of other people's videos. Now, if you liked it, please leave that comment in the comment section below. If you didn't like it, please leave that criticism in the comment section below. I'd love to hear all criticisms. I'd love to hear all compliments. At the beginning of this video, I joked that I was back from the dead. What happened is, over the semester, I had some really difficult classes, and they really demanded my time. Well, I completed those classes, got fantastic grades, and now I'm not taking any classes during the summer, so I'm back to making videos. I'll continue my Let's Plays, continue having fun with Kerbal Space Program and Minecraft. I will, of course, continue making videos about my progression with the Ruins game. I'm very passionate about that game, and I really want to get it out, and really want to show you my processes as I build it up. At any rate, yeah, let me know what you think. If you have suggestions for other videos that you would like me to look at the logic of and explain why the logic is wrong, then I would love for those suggestions. Anyway, until then, I'm Conan Horas. Have fun.
I'm not a fool.